Thank you for joining me for another instalment for the Trail of the Green Man. We are going to be doing something just a little bit different today. We are going to show you some of the findings that we have been able to put together and basically start off an investigation based on the collection of the Green Man examples. Now, this is the method that we're going to use here has been explained on the web page before. If you'd like to go and take a look at the printer's marks and ornaments, the origin of block C, and basically the printing devices, where we can show some kind of history based on marks, blemishes, and it's like damage. We are actually able to distinguish prints that had taken place at the same time. And just for a quick reminder before we go here, we have block C here, and I'll only spend a minute on this because we do have information about this already in the website. But what you can see here is a nice example of what we call block C, or the London block, and it's a prime example, free from damage, and we can kind of trace its life, although this is just a kind of a linear example. This is in no way representative of what actually happened. This is just going to give you some examples. And as we can see here, it has managed to accumulate a little bit of damage here on the left, which isn't present previously. And if we progress that again, we can see we still have the damage on the left, but now we have managed to accrue some extra damage on the right hand side. But further to that, we can start identifying various things, because now in this example we have the damage on the left and we have the damage on the right, but we also have other telltale signs that helps us to group these publications further. As you can see here, we have what I would like to say it's like an ink bubble, if there is such a thing. We'll settle for blemish, where perhaps it has not been inked correctly, or I think something has got in the way of the block and the paper. Something. And what is strange is that if it was basically something on the block and you ink the block, whatever was on the block would be a solid black dot, because that would also be inked. But if we take a little closer look at this, you can clearly see that it's actually not a solid black dot. So there is something there that seems to be indented, meaning that the ink was not in the inside of the circle. But we can then trace that. As we can see, we still have the damage on the left, we have the damage on the right, and then we have the same ink blemish or bubble again. So we can tell that these had been printed at the same time, because either you would re-ink the block to be used, or you would clear the blemishes off for the next print run, whenever that may be, and that would not be present. So we can show that these were indeed printed at the same time. Whether it is the sheets that have been printed at the same time, and then just a sheet that has a Green Man printed on it has been stored, or it is what it is, or what the other option would be is that these are just printed at the same time. Now, if it was all to be printed on the one sheet, I suppose we would need to start to consider, and I do know that these kind of practices took place, I think, like around the Frankfurt and the book fairs. They were able to buy, sell, trade blocks, and there's got to be a possibility that something of which I was called in the trade would be a sheet cancel, where perhaps blank sheets would be decorated and nothing more, and these sheets that had been decorated would then be sold on en masse, allowing printers to then take that design away and then print on top using the designs that they'd already pre-purchased. So that would possibly mean that if you were to buy, let's say, Folio size sheeting, it would be printed on it perhaps as many as 4 times. If the sheeting was to be Quattro size, perhaps it would be printed on it 2 times or 4 times or 8 times. It's kind of a bit of a hard one to say that possibly these sheets were all printed at the same time and then distributed. It seems, again, that is a question and an answer that is something I have not managed to get to the bottom of. But I'm going to give you an example here now, and this example is a very famous example. Well, sorry, the example's not famous because it's not really known. Before I actually get to that example, what we're going to take a look at is the Fama Fraternitatis, printed in 1614. And when it was printed, it was compiled together with basically another document, the Reformation of, I think it's the whole wide world, which allowed for a way for the Rosicrucian Brotherhood or the Fama to be attached to some other political or religious, how could you say it, scenario, meaning it gained a lot of traction, or it would be linked in everybody's mind to the Reformation. But we're going to look a little bit more into the response here. You can see here, responsion, and this is a response to the Fama, printed at the same time as the Fama. Now, this response is by an Adam Hasselmeyer, and this is a bit of a mystery. Adam Hasselmeyer was a Tyrolean schoolmaster, a musician, an alchemist, and he'd spent a lot of time reading the theological books of Paracelsus. His works were reprinted and it had green men also in them. And he was basically a follower of I can't remember the exact wordings of it, but it was like the religion of the 2 lights, the light of grace and the light of nature. I think it's the Theophrasta Sancta. And this is a bit of a type of a following from Paracelsus. And Hasselmeyer was a great follower of that. And Hasselmeyer seen the Rosicross Fraternity as an organisation that kind of aligned with Paracelsus' religious messages. And kind of these messages had basically been quiet until Paracelsus passed. And Adam Hasselmeyer was a great follower of this. And I'm not too sure, I would need to check in this, but I think Adam Hasselmeyer was an apprentice of, or learned under, either Paracelsus or a Paracelsus teacher. So it was quite close to this. And I would hate to have to go into great detail on this, because there is so many scholars who have wrote a lot on this, and there's no way I kind of refute any of that, because we have the likes of Tobias Hess. Sorry, that was a bit of a statement. It was Carlos Gilly. Sorry, Tobias Hess. I've kind of get mixed up there. It was Carlos Gilly and Tobias Churton. They have both wrote about this, because this man was supposed to be a bit of a myth. And it was a bit of a thing, because this was taking place at the same time as the Fama was printed. And they're telling a story about this Adam Hasselmeyer, and it's quite, because it's like a real-time story. It was kind of happening, or it had already happened, or it was taking place during the printing of the Fama. And this is quite interesting, because the response to the Fama was actually written in 1612, which is 2 years before the Fama was printed. And there's always been talk about how the Fama Fraternitatis was being circulated in manuscript form before it was printed, circulated in circles. And Adam Hasselmeyer is supposedly seen this manuscript copy and had his response printed to it. in a separate document, and then when the Fama Fraternitatis was then printed for the first time, his reply was printed with it. But the problem was, this original 1612 print of Adam Hasselmeyer's Answort, or Answer to the Fama, or Antwort, sorry, or Answer to the Fama, was lost. And a lot of researchers really wanted to hunt this down, and I think it was quite lucky, because I think Carlos Gilly spent a lot of time looking for it, and by chance I think he was contacted because one copy had been found, and if I can get this right here, the Herzogen Anna Amalia Bibliothek in Weimar, or Weimar, one copy. And luckily for academia, or everybody, I don't include myself in that, he managed to take a facsimile of this. And I don't think the facsimile was released until disaster struck. I think the front cover to this Antwort was published first, and then sadly a fire took place at the library where this answer was stored, and the answer, the only remaining copy that we or people know of, was sadly destroyed. So luckily Carlos Gilly, having a full facsimile of the document, released this, and this is how we can get to see this answer today. Now, the thing about this is it's kind of, what I'm going to try to show here is, just like if you go and look at some of the videos, especially the one about the Zeno narrative, where I'm going to put forward that this is there's something manufactured about it. Here we have the Fama Fraternitatis in 1614, and it's printed with a reply. Now, this reply, as I've just mentioned, was printed in response to the manuscript, not the print, which is quite funny. But what I'm going to show here is something that is might bring all that into question, and it's something a little bit outside my humble expertise, to be honest. So this video, just like the rest of the Green Man, is more like a shout out for help. So what I'm going to let you know is, now, the whole kind of story about Adolf Hasselmeyer is, as we said at the start, he thought the views of the Rosy Cross would align with his views with Paracelsus and the Theophrasta Sancti. So he was, how can I put this, introduced to Prince Augustus of Anhalt. And Prince Augustus was a fanatical fan of these texts, of all these type of esoteric texts. He was a massive fan of this. And we are told that he asked, I need to get this right here, it's all from memory, Adam Hasselmeyer to go and search for the second manifesto that was promised in the Fama, which would be the Confessio. And if memory serves me right, I think his plan was leaked, or perhaps they even asked for permission to go to, I think it was Languedoc, to go and search for the RC. And sadly, I think it was an Inquisitor, Genonone, or there was an Inquisitor from the Catholic Church who had caught wind of this. And of course, anything to do with the Rosy Cross back then was a punishable offence of some type, or they would try to punish it. So apparently, he never made it to Languedoc. This poor gentleman was kidnapped and wished away, and before he knew it, he was a galley slave. And I think that's where he spent the next 5 years, if the story about this person was to be true, because as a punishment. And I think for what I've read, and that it was something that once they'd found out where he is, it was able for rich people to gather the money to pay a ransom or pay a price to have him released, which took the 5 years. And this is how it was used in the Fama Fraternitatis as, I suppose you could say, a warning that to others, I suppose, to be careful type thing. And this is what has brought us to here. But the main point I'd like to bring up here is this connection with Prince Augustus of Anhalt, because it is said that he held a private or secret printing press at Plitzkau. Well, Plitzkau, it's a castle, basically, in Anhalt. And he would print these type of esoteric documents in secret. And indeed, the Antwort, the answer, was printed in one of in this secret printing press. And this is where I have a problem, though. And thanks to the Green Man, we are going to shed a little bit more light on this. Now, I have managed to get Carlos Gillies' write-up about this document. It wasn't just released as a book. He had wrote quite a lot about it, and I have slowly been going through it, and I have been translating it from the German. But there's just a couple of little things here that I would like to bring up. It's saying here that Adolf Hasselmeyer has remained a riddle in history, especially with the Rosicrucians, until very recently. It's saying here that many historians thought that they had been solved by casting doubt on the historical existence of this man, or simply denying it. Now, this isn't me saying this. This is, hopefully the translation is good. Is Carlos Gillies basically saying there was at some point where they didn't believe that this man even existed. And this was just a story type thing, and it wasn't until this first printed book was found in that library that they began to investigate further and bring it more to light. But this seems to kind of ring a bell with us at the Green Man, because I think there's been a lot of stories being made up by the Rosy Cross and allowed to, I don't know, gestate, I suppose, and grow, and they were never checked. And I could be possibly wrong here, but we are going to try to get to the bottom of it. Like the RC Manifesto, this was something I picked out. It says, the editors of the Rosicrucian Manifesto simply described the reason for publishing Hasselmeyer's answer with the sentence that it was not printed here without reason. What would that reason be? I think it's all to do with hunting down the Green Men, and I'm going to show you why. So what I'm going to show you here is, this is the front page for the answer, or the Antwort, to the Fama 1612. But we are going to take a very close look at this here. Now, we're going to look for blemishes and things like that, things that we can show has been done in another print. Now, the most important part of this, which is going to give the game away basically, can you make out this line here? You see this straight line running down the page? It is like a crease or a missed ink line. Of course we can see that there's a patch here missing, there's a patch here missing, we have a rather large black dot in the ring. So there's various things here, but that crease you can see down that line here is very, very telling, and that is what's going to help give the game away, if you will, because this answer is believed to have been printed at the private printing press in Plitzkau. It's the whole part of the story. It's the whole mystique of it. It's the whole part of all this thing, but there's a problem. But luckily, we have arrived at one of these great sites. It's Irara, and we are going to look at several examples printed by this person that contain a green man that is rather suspicious. Here is one example here. We still have it. I'm just going to quickly show, this is just a kind of preliminary. Just taking a little minute to load, sadly. And let me see. Yep, we have another example here. We can see the line coming through again. See if this will load up for us. Problems when doing things live. Yeah, sorry about that. The website seemed to had a bit of a bad day. And we have another example. You can see the line coming through. And the last example, you can see the line coming through here. You can make it out. It's still there. You can still see it. So that means that there must have been something on the block at the time of printing. Whether it would have been a hair or something like that. Something that is stopped the contact between the block and the paper. Now, if we can kind of take a look at things here, now what I'll do is, so what I've done here is I've just put side by side so we can get a little look. We can see the crease. We can see a little angle that had been missed at the corner. This angle missing is also it's also on the answer. We can see there's a bit of ink being missed here. This is also on the answer. We have a rather prominent dot in the ring. This is also the answer. We have a collection of ink here at the bottom. This is also here. The large circular smudge on the forehead. This is present here. We have the dot and the dot. We have these present on it. It's fair to say that these are all present on each. You can see here, don't get me wrong, some of the ink smudges will not be present on all of them because the ink, might have faded off the block or been used and as it's went to the next block. So you will see some of them. Like this one here, we can still see the smudge in the ring. We can still see the smudge at the bottom. We've only got the one dot left inside. You can see as the line travels past it. It's missing the ink there on the loop. It's missing the ink there on the loop. So it is quite easy to see that some of these, what I'll try to show is, we can actually see that this has like an outside rim round it. Let me just, there's like a kind of, how can we put it, shadow, if you will, round the outsides, which is not present here on the print of the answer. It's not present on this copy. This copy has the shadow. You can kind of see the shadow on it. This copy has the shadowing. This copy has the shadowing. This copy has the shadowing. As if it's like a print, but when you've lifted it up, you've kind of let it touch the paper again, just a little bit, but not centered. So we've got the answer, and then we've basically got one more copy that doesn't have this. As you can see here, it's got the dot. It's got a slight curving of the ink in here. It's got a slight curving of the ink there. I am convinced that this is printed at the same time. We've got lots of examples of it. And this is printed in Zurich. And apart from the printer, all of the other copies that I have shown you are all anonymous. Apart from I think you could say they are all anonymous, apart from one is basically written about the philosopher. I think it's just ellipsis. But if we kind of come back to the spreadsheet, we can look at the authors, and here we have this one here, anonymous. This one here is the Lipsius, or Justus Lipsius, which is a philosopher, I think, from olden times. So again, it's probably like a rehash of his work, but again, it's still anonymous. And then we can come down to his other three here. One, anonymous, anonymous, and yeah, this will be anonymous as well here because I couldn't find the author. So that only leaves one copy that is basically got a name for the author, and this is this one. And this is the one that doesn't have the foreshadowing, but it does share the same marks, creases, blemishes. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this where you can actually see this. Yeah. So we're going to take a closer look at this, because that's us now able to show that this answer to the farmer was not printed in some secret printing press in Plitzkau. It was printed in Zurich, and this is Taguri. That is Latin for Zurich, in the 1600s. Now, hopefully you've learned to pick up that the answer to the farmer was written in 1612. 1612. And this is printed in the 1600s. This is 12 years of a difference. 12 years. Now, in the Trail of the Green Man, we can show that there was, if you like to believe in the sheet cancels, where sheets of paper were printed and kept for a later time, we can show discrepancies between use of these sheets of paper to between 40, 50 and 60 years. Generational, basically. And here we have here, if we get this right, the answer to the farmer was printed before the farmer was printed. But the printed answer to the farmer was in response to apparently a manuscript of the farmer. But here we have the block being used, and it has the same marks, it has the same printing marks, it has the same creases, it shares all the aspects of it, letting us have a very strong sense that these were printed together 12 years before the answer was printed, 14 years before the farmer was printed. This is something that I think needs a deeper investigation, or a pursuit that is out of not my remit. I would love to follow it through, but I would not be doing it justice. The people who have brought us this far have the ability to take the information that I have provided, or that I am willing to provide. It's all online, and get to the bottom of this, because I am leaning towards that this whole thing and the Adolf Hasselmeyer is a fabrication. It's just another facet of this mystery where it beckons people to challenge and look and find the tomb of Brother I.O. through whatever means possible. And the fact that we have these sheets printed 12 years before the answer to the farmer, which wasn't printed yet, was even printed. So we've got somebody printing a book to a response on a manuscript. It just doesn't seem to stack up as good as it used to. Am I saying that it's a fabrication? I would like to, but at this stage I cannot. I need people, perhaps this is you, perhaps you would like to take this information and help me get to the bottom of this mysterious Adam Hasselmeyer, the man who supposedly spent 5 years in the galleys for printing a reply to the Rosicrucians, but possibly the reply was printed 12 years before, or 10 years before the manuscript was in existence, and 12 years before the Fama was printed. Please come along, join us at the Trail of the Green Man, bring your expertise, or just bring your zeal. Join us in the Discord and see if you can't help bring a curtain to the mystery of Adam Hasselmeyer. Thanks for listening.